this voice in my head that's so harsh on me, where did I pick that up from? What is it actually saying? Is it getting in my way, or is it getting me to where I want to go? And I think you can start to create these shifts with actual true presence with yourself. And to me, presence is a lifestyle. I'm continually in dialogue with my head, and I'm continually aware of what's coming up in my body. And knowing that when the old stuff comes up that I don't want to run the show, I have that choice.
Well, here we are. I am so excited to be here and share this space with you. This is my first interactive live podcast ever. So there's a little bit of emotion running high, and there's a lot of feelings going through the body right now. And I'm so glad to be here at Tribe in Baltimore with my friend and Soul 911, Melissa Legette. And thank you so much, Lola Mannequin, for allowing me to use this space and to connect on a more intimate level with all of you guys. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule. I know it's Saturday. I have 3 kids, and they're all at the farm right now, so they are, I know how it feels to be missing events, and I appreciate the fact that you guys are here. Really quick story before we get started. The main theme here is about breaking chains and seeing our unconscious blocks so that that way we can create the reality in which we want to live. But first, I wanted to preface it with this. When I was 16 years old, a classmate of mine asked me the question, how do you know this is real? How do you know you're not in a coma and you're dreaming all of this up? And I was deeply entrenched in Methodist dogma. And the first response that I had was, this guy's going to hell. Like, as a Christian, conservative Christian, that was outside of my belief system. That was outside of everything I've been taught, Sunday school, all the way up to being 16. And the more now that I go into my spirituality, the more I'm starting to think he might be right. A lot of the mystics and a lot of the great teachers that I have studied all allude to the fact that this may be a Maya, a dream. John Hopkins, physicist, wrote in Nature Journal that the universe is mind. Have fun. And I'm still interpreting that, and I'm still trying to have fun. And that's why we're here today, to have more fun. So Melissa, I think we are healing a lot of past life trauma right now.
Yeah, we are.
Between me and you, being seen in this space and talking our truth.
We had a life where being seen did not go well for us.
And what happened there?
We were persecuted. No big deal.
We're safe now. We're not going to be persecuted or burned at the stake. So I appreciate that, guys. I want to give everybody some context about you and your background. I know that you have an MS in clinical psychology.
Yes.
You used to be an atheist, and
Hardcore.
now you are a spiritual coach. So why don't you walk us through that and what that looked like?
Yeah, so I actually declared myself an atheist at age 10 or 11 to my parents, and they were like, well, we're not religious, so okay, where's this coming from? And it was very much my identity. And I used to, in my younger years, like to kind of try to debate people and have them see my way. And then I went through a series of life tragedies, one of them being I lost my best friend in a car accident. And this was in my early to mid-20s, and it just kind of got to a point where I was at a low, and I started just questioning. And I found the work of Dr. Ian Stevenson he was at the University of Virginia, and he's passed now, case studies on past lives. And he did a lot of them in India, where it was very, very young children, age like 2, they had just started talking, and they were saying details about lives where they could actually find sometimes the family that it was connected to. And they just knew and spoke to things that it wouldn't make sense unless this was actually happening. And that started to pique my interest and allow me to start asking questions. And it really was, I think my journey deepened when I met my wonderful husband, and I fell head over heels in love. And his love is just such a safe space for me to explore these things deeper. And going back a little bit, at my best friend's funeral when I was 24, about to turn 25, her family is very religious, and they were all speaking to how they were going to see her again. And I remember sitting there thinking, I'm never going to see her again, and I'm the only one in this room that knows the truth. And then 4 years later, my husband won a speaking event where one of the prizes was we got to sit with a medium, the famous medium Thomas John. And I was skeptical, but I went in and he immediately started saying like actual names. He wasn't just like, oh, I'm feeling an M over here. He was like, you, AJ, boom. And I was like, oh, okay. So if I hear the name Pearl, which is my great aunt who passed, I was like, I feel like this is going to be real. For some reason, I just said that name. And then he was talking to a couple in front of me. And then all of a sudden he said, the name Pearl is coming through. And I like perked up. And he was like, and I'm feeling a woman who passed mid-20s, and it was sudden. And he started just describing everything that happened. But I was like very hesitant to say anything. And then all of a sudden he was like, she's saying the name Melissa. I was like, okay, I'll claim it. And she came through with a message, and the message was, what you were thinking at my funeral was wrong. And that was just in this moment, an undeniable, like, okay, I don't know what's going on. And that really opened my eyes to there's more. And then it was either that year or the next year, I knew we wanted to bring a child earthside, and I wanted to become a mother. And I really started to explore my intuition because I wanted my intuition to guide me on that journey. And I started doing that by pulling tarot. And then I started reading tarot for friends and family. And I started getting messages where people would look at me and they would be like, how do you know this? And I would just be like, I don't know. And that's when I really started to kind of explore on my own and see what I could really do. And I found that in exploring my intuition, I led with this energy of curiosity and trust. So something would come through, and instead of immediately being like, oh, no, I'm crazy, that can't possibly be a past life, I would say yes, and whatever I was getting would deepen. And then I needed some sort of like validation of what I was getting was actually, not crazy. So when I would take it to people, I've had so many moments of them just saying like, how could you possibly know this? And that really allowed me to deepen my gifts. And then 2 years ago, I started doing this professionally. And that was actually, I made a joke about this past life wound that we had, but I actually had a very deep past life wound around being seen in this work. And I had to do a lot of healing around that. And I very much believe we heal in layers. So you kind of get deeper and deeper and deeper to the core of the wound. And you were the first podcast I was ever on. And I did a lot of healing, like going into that podcast. And I remember you asked me about it, and I was like, I am healed, like, see me, world. And then right after you stopped pressing record, I spiraled. I was like, oh my gosh, people are gonna know I see past lives. And I used to work for Johns Hopkins for 10 years. And I was like, I'm never gonna get my old job back. And Brian was like, you want your old job back? I'm like, what? And then in that moment, I, held space for everything I was feeling. And I realized this was an opportunity to heal that wound in a deeper way. And I believe that happens for all of us. I don't believe that we hit this place of like, oh, I'm on the proverbial healed hammock, I'm complete. I believe that we continue to face these programs, these subconscious beliefs that we hold very deeply, and they come up again and again to be faced and to be seen in new ways.
That's so powerful. Like as an atheist and then having that experience with the medium, like how does that rock your paradigm? Like does it start to crack the foundation or does it totally obliterate that?
So I thought I was open enough to it. I was still skeptical because they did, in preparing to sit with this medium, they said, set an intention and go into meditation. Well, they didn't say go into meditation. I said it in meditation. And I didn't speak this to anyone, but I went into meditation and prayer and I asked to speak with Kaylin, and then my great aunt Pearl, and then my grandmother. And I wanted a message around, I knew I wanted to become a mother. And in that reading, when he did start speaking to me, another thing that came through was there was a aunt and a grandmother, and they were holding a baby. So it was very much like everything that I had asked just in my own world. I didn't even share this with Brian before going in. It's very much, I had to see the world was not as I thought it to be. And even I've learned that lesson again and again to the point where I'm just like, when somebody says something even that's like shattering, like you just said, is this all a simulation? I'm just like, maybe, like, sure.
It could be. Like, who
am I to say?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's, I used to think I knew everything in my atheist days. And I think part of, I'm very evolved in my healing now where I can just be like, I know nothing. I think I do, but I'm ready for it to
I
just
think that's
change.
the key. I think it's like if you know, you don't know. It's like until you can truly surrender to the fact that you don't know anything, and that you have this like this idea of like looking at the world through like a child, and like taking every moment as it's fresh and new, is where you actually experience life. It's where you actually experience the moment for what it is. It's like right now having this experience with all of you, having this conversation. Like there is that part of me, the ego, that wants to control and manipulate the conversation and be like, it has to be the best ever, and we got to follow this script here. But there's also a part of me that's like, expand your heart, you know. And the hardest travel that I've ever traveled in this world is not in physical reality. It's from right here. It's bringing the heart and being in the heart space more, to allow myself to be vulnerable, to hold these conversations and these containers, because I feel like that's where the magic happens. And we can dive into that a little bit later with Plato and the allegory of the cave. But going back really quick to the unconscious biases or the subconscious, like we are only 1% aware of our reality, right? We think we are through the ego, and you may differ with that with your background. But how do we see the reality? Like, how does the inward interpretation of who we are paint our reality?
I believe the subconscious, which I've heard estimates of anywhere, like the subconscious dictates 85%, 90, 95%, you're saying 99% of our thoughts, actions, and behaviors. And I would argue, like I think I have before, you are a very self-aware person. I don't think you're at that 1%. And these programs are programs that we picked up on in childhood. So my frame of this comes from Dr. Bruce Lipton. And he speaks about how starting in the 3rd trimester of pregnancy until about age 7, we are just in a theta brainwave state, and we are learning how to be human. So we're getting those programs. And a lot of other pivotal moments happen from like 7 to 14. But it's in that programming, that's how you think about and conceptualize your world. So what I noticed for me, I always talk about my money stories. So I took a lot of my money stories on at that age. And I come from, both my parents have blue collar backgrounds, and they didn't deliberately speak badly about people that had money, but there was just kind of like this energy in my home, I would say, of people with money were not to be trusted. They were bad in some way. And I also grew up with a lot of the good girl programming, which many women do, of like, I want to be the good girl, so I have to reject the bad thing. So for my 20s, I wore it as a badge of honor that I worked in research and I didn't make a lot of money. And it wasn't until my first date with Brian where I was telling him like, oh, I'm working this job and I'm doing good in the world, so I'm never going to make a lot of money. He was like, well, you would do a lot more good in the world if you had money. I was like, what? Yes, you're right. So I realized I was actually subconsciously pushing money away. And I was doing it from that egoic place of like, I need to solidify my goodness so I cannot have the bad thing. And in becoming an entrepreneur and starting my own business and working to expand that business, I've had to face my money programs again and again and again, because they are so deep within me, and they do come online, and they come online when I am scared and I'm facing something new. I'm actually working through this with Lena right now. We've just partnered up to run retreats together, and I'm voice noting her like, all right, my money story is online again. I feel like I'm overwhelmed with scarcity and no one's gonna come. And just being able to have these safe places to kind of voice them to, that really helps me. And then I also very much journal. And then I do a lot of meditation work around, because with money is a flow. I believe money is feminine energy, and you need to receive that flow and hold that flow and restructure it. So I've noticed in my meditations that some of it is not only like I need to adjust the flow to me and allow that to feel safe, but how I receive it and how I hold it. And I kind of can tell in my body, like what number makes me feel uncomfortable. That's going to be a ceiling for me that I need to work through.
Sure. Epigenetics, I love it. So we all carry ancestral trauma, like throughout the ages, through our DNA makeup. Our grandparents experience a trauma, and it automatically mutates the genetic makeup of the cells. And so it transferred over generation. How do I know what's mine? Like how do I know when I am in a situation where I'm experiencing money issues, and I feel that gut reaction of like, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough this, lack, right? How do I know what is mine and what is not? And how do I heal that? I mean, you gave a couple of good protocols there.
Yeah.
But how do we really dive into that and heal it for not just me, but for my ancestors as well?
Yeah. So for me, I actually have worked a lot with, I declare that this is no longer mine, and I put it down. I do. So when you are in meditation, when you're in a meditative state, you are in theta, and it's that same brainwave state that you took these programs on. So in meditation is really where you can start to do a lot of this rewiring of the neural pathways in your brain. So I go into meditation and I really go in with the intention of I'm going to face this script of money is bad. It's a very basic one. But I felt into where in my ancestral line we took that on. And I do this, I'm very, I can kind of see things. So I had this as a string going from me to my parents to my grandparents. And I saw the string go, and then it lit up when it kind of came online. And I don't know those ancestors by name, but I had them step forward. And I wrote all my money issues on a script. And in my meditation, I handed them that script. Like, this is not mine to carry. I'm putting this down, especially because I'm not giving it to my daughter to carry. Like, it's kind of, I just declared it in that way. And I think you can do that with anything that you no longer want to carry. You just make that statement of like, I am done. I'm putting this down. It is no longer for me.
That's beautiful. I love that. It just makes me curious if the average American is operating at a 99% unconscious rate, like, what's free will?
I don't know. I used to really like the work of Sam Harris, and he claims that there is no such thing as free will. And also all of my work, with my work with clients, I am guided by peace, and I want them to have sovereignty. So to me, free will is, and this is just Melissa's definition.
Sure.
It's choice, it's conscious choice that's not dictated by your subconscious programming. That's my free will. And I feel when something is, I call it my bullshit. That's all my old programs that I'm working to release. I feel when that's running the show, I feel how that feels different in my body. And then I feel how when it's my heart, my soul, my higher self running the show. And sometimes my ego is very powerful. If you have a powerful soul, you probably have a powerful ego as well. But I'll feel how my ego is actually trying to get me to make the choice that's going to keep me safe. And then I can just kind of relax into, no, my heart is leading, my soul is leading now. That's my free will. When even faced with the fears and the stories of all the ways in which I could fail, be rejected, go into just be broke, all the things, all the stories, it's me still choosing the path that calls me from that heart-led space.
That's such a great awareness, because I can see how the body naturally reacts when I have a situation arise, whether it's an in-person podcast and I don't meet the expectations that my ego places upon it. I could feel the body come up with a similar pattern of how I'm going to react. And so the body gets addicted to those different neurochemicals that are created in your body, and it stays in this pattern, and your life keeps repeating itself and repeating itself and repeating itself. And you want to manifest a different life, but you can't get out of those biophysical feelings and emotions in your body. So how do you catch yourself? How do you expand the awareness to where you're recreating your reality for what you want or desire, but you're also moving through those emotions? You're moving through the body. You're not allowing the body to dictate your future. You're actually being a conscious creator.
So I start by just identifying where the emotion is in my body, the nervousness for doing this first live person event today. That was in my solar plexus, right here above my belly button. And I just sit with it. Because emotions usually just have about a 90-second to at the most 3-minute experience in your body, starting with the neurochemicals in your brain being released, and then you're having that physical experience of it. I just tune into that. And then once you start to tune into that, it starts to separate you from the emotion. And it's not I am scared Melissa, it's I am Melissa feeling fear, which is that difference. So I can sit with the fear, and then once I have that full experience come up in my body, and then it starts to go down, because that's what naturally happens, is the emotion peaks and then it goes down. But what so many of us do is we fight against that peak. So we're like pushing it down, pushing it down, pushing it down, and that creates so much more power. So I just let it peak, and then I let it go down, and then I sit and I say, is there anything else I need to know? Like, is there anything on the other side of this? And usually there's, like with fear, it's just like, no, we're scared. I'm like, cool, I can do this scared. I've done things scared before. Let's go. And then it's, sometimes it's like my inner child wanting to say something of like how this could be, again, my demise. And I'm like, okay, I get that, but it's adult Melissa running the show, so we're going to do this thing anyway. So it's just this experience for me of every day I am checking in with my body and allowing my body to communicate and lead. And I think this is very important because I think women naturally do this. Not saying that men can't access this, but women are so programmed to be nice and good and people pleasers. I think a lot of times we'll be getting a physical reaction to a situation that's not good for us, and we push it down because we can't be rude or we can't be seen as like a bitch. And really just allow your body to communicate to you. There's deep, deep, deep wisdom in that.
Sure. As a man in today's society, like I barely know what love is really, or what that feels like, because I push so much of it down. And I'm just starting to realize more so that the inner work is feeling the emotions, identifying them and what they're associated with. So when you talk about the wounded masculine, I don't know if any man really knows what that means or what it feels like. When you work with your clients that are males, how do you help them tap into those emotions? How do you help them tap into the trauma and identify where this is from? Like if I go out and I speak to a bunch of friends about ancestral trauma, they're like, what do you do? What are you doing? Like, what are you talking about? Like, I just want to have a beer with you and talk sports, What is love? I mean, all these emotions that we're just now identifying with, and like, for me anyway, finding like what that actually means, what that feels like how do you help them, men, tap into the wounded masculine, heal that to turn into the sacred masculine or divine masculine?
So I believe that in my sessions, I embody the divine feminine. And I believe that when the divine feminine witnesses the divine masculine, and I not only am witnessing them where they are, but I'm shining a light on where they want to go. And I'm shining that light with like, this is how I see you. I see you as this beautiful man capable of rising to this. And then things just start flowing from that space. I'm really thinking into like, have I ever had to like pry something out of a man? And I don't think so. A lot of times things that they didn't even think that they would ever share with anyone are coming to light in these sessions. And I think that comes from that place of, I am holding such trust, and it's a safe, sacred place. And I think in building that with my clients, this can come online more easily. I don't think if I were to go to a bar and just like catch somebody watching football, like, hey, you want to talk about trauma? I don't think I'd have the same reaction or the same response.
So it's set and setting almost? Like,
I think so. Yeah. I think because again, if you're saying like all of these things, how do we get this to come online? I liken this to, I see the divine masculine as safe. Just like I said, when I met my husband, he was an exhale. He was just this overwhelming feeling of I am safe, and I can even explore further depths of me, and they can be held here. And the divine feminine I see as love. Like that's just her open heart. It's love. It's divine love. It's love without conditions. And needing to create this container of safety in order to access the feminine. I see that all the time. I actually have recently begun shifting my understanding. I don't know if there is a wounded feminine energy. I think the masculine energy is what's wounded. And when the masculine is wounded, the feminine does not come online. She needs safety to come online. So I think it really is wounded masculine, then it's suppressed feminine. And this happens in men and women. They have that wounded masculine energy, and then they cannot access their higher self, their soul, their intuition, their trust with themselves, and their trust with also just their path. That's been something I've been playing around with. So it's really creating that container of safety to then access that love that I think you're speaking to.
Getting out of that fight or flight. And then what does it look like when a man steps into that power? Like, is Brian the example of that?
Brian is, and he's also very human. So there are times when we both are just taken over by the logistics of our day and lack of sleep. He's building a beautiful, incredible, powerful business right now, and that can have its own demands. And I actually can tell now how I react when he's not kind of in that place of I am holding this divine masculine. I immediately want to get my masculine online. I'm like, oh, am I keeping it safe now? Let's go. And it's been this internal dialogue in myself of I must soften to shift him back into that, because I don't believe that a woman will ever shift a man into their healed masculine by critiquing all the ways in which they're not in their healed masculine.
Sure. That's beautiful. I haven't really stepped into that until I became a father, and of course, specifically to my daughters, and allowing myself to love from a different perspective. I mean, with my son, there's also the programs that I operate from of like, I'm learning more to be a parent to him of who he is rather than the son that I want. Mm-hmm. And that's been a journey. And then my daughters, just allowing myself to be vulnerable just to a little girl that just wants the love of her father, mm-hmm. and being that protector and being the provider, but also being an object or a person of security for them so that they can explore who they are in this reality. As a man, it's so tough for us to touch the deepest part of ourselves, because we numb it. We numb it with, I have this theory of, when industrialization started, that's when the men went out of the house, mm-hmm. and that's when they started working 9 to 5 or whatever the jobs they were. And so they were absent from the home. And so mm-hmm. all the young boys then didn't have that example of what a man should be. And we didn't spend time with the men and learn how to be a man. It is now when I think that we have more opportunity at home that we can be more of an example, but we don't know what our models are. So just speaking to you and listening to a lot of what you're saying, like how should a man be? How should a man be with his children? How should a man be in society? How should a man be in his spirituality?
A man should, and I want to not use the word should, but I invite men to be present. And I get this frame from the work of David Deida, he says the gift of the masculine is his presence and his attention, and the gift of the feminine is her love, it's her heart. And to be truly present with your child, of just being able to witness them for all they are bringing to the world, to your world, that is an incredible gift. And to be present with yourself of, why am I reactive? Where is this coming from? And like this voice in my head that's so harsh on me, where did I pick that up from? What is it actually saying? Is it getting in my way, or is it getting me to where I want to go? And I think you can start to create these shifts with actual true presence with yourself. And to me, presence is a lifestyle. I'm continually in dialogue with my head, and I'm continually aware of what's coming up in my body. And knowing that when the old stuff comes up that I don't want to run the show, I have that choice. And I believe, so I'm sure many of you, maybe not all of you, are familiar with this, the time that we're in right now, where they're speaking to the rise of the divine feminine consciousness. And I very much believe that as the divine feminine rises, our masculine consciousness is just rising in her wake to hold that. And what I'm seeing is, I believe that we are the cycle breakers. We are the ones that are bringing awareness to all of these programs and patterns that are keeping us distracted, keeping us from being the father we can be, the mother we can be, the partner we can be. And we are bringing awareness to these cycles to start to break them. And the children that are coming through right now, they are the game changer. Mm. They are here to seed a completely different consciousness, a completely different way of being. And I think that's one of the most challenging aspects of being a parent right now, is like trying to parent these children that just come in here knowing exactly who they are and what they want. My husband and I joke all the time, like, our daughter just doesn't listen. She's like, nope, I hear you, but I'm going to do this thing that I know I want to do. And we're like, okay. And I feel like you are learning so much from your children on how to be this man. Like, they are also a huge part of your path, guiding you on this path. And I invite any parent to listen to their child and allow their child to teach them and guide them just as much as they think that their role is to teach and guide them as well. Mm.
So I want to talk a little bit more and dive into how we can be conscious creators in this reality. What's your thoughts on the quantum realm, like quantum physics, like how we can connect with that and align our energy and our life force to that to essentially create more of what we desire at a conscious level, not unconsciously?
So I just actually listened to another podcast on, and I don't think I have the exact words, but those experiences where they shoot protons.
The observer effect? You talking
Well, it's
about
like,
the
I think so. It's
the
like there's
double
two
split?
slits in like a
the double
plate.
split.
Yeah, and they've captured that even if there's a sensor in the room to witness this, it doesn't have to be a human, but like any kind of consciousness that can witness this happening, the protons stay in. I think it's I don't know. Do you know the
It's
form?
wave. It's like
Wave
potential,
versus-
and then collapse into particle.
Thank you, wave and particle. So they'll stay in particle form as opposed to wave. And like I was saying, with presence being a lifestyle, I think to play with these worlds, you witness it. We are here to witness each other. We are here to witness this beautiful planet that we're on. We're here to be witness to nature and her beauty. And to me, the quantum space is just the soul realm. So like in being able to witness myself and truly witness myself, all of my flaws, along with all of my gifts, that is how I was able to then be able to access these other realms, these spiritual realms. I think that's also bringing my presence to meditation in this way. I was able to start to access these past life realms. I think that for me has been the key.
Sure. I always wonder, I witnessed some pretty amazing mediums in my time tapping into some deep level of someone's psyche to bring up information. You've had this experience, but I always wonder, like, if the unconscious is the non-physical, if that makes sense. Like, we think the physical here, and then we want to think non-physical with entities and beings over there that have all the answers. But like we're going back, and when we fall asleep, we go into a dream state. Like, how much control do you have? You know, like, I feel like I have limited consciousness. I feel like sometimes I can get lucid and have experiences. But like when we pass away, and you probably don't have a lot of experience in this, but I'm just curious to hear your answer. Like, I wonder when we pass away, maybe this is why like Buddhists try to die consciously. Like when we pass away and we go through that tunnel, or where will we go in the non-physical or unconscious? Like, how conscious do you think someone is? And is that what keeps us into this cycle of reincarnation?
I think that what keeps us in the cycle of reincarnation has to do with karma that you can pick up in these experiences. And also, our souls evolve through incarnating. We evolve through experiences. So even terrible, horrible experiences, that's a way in which your soul evolves. I don't think it has necessarily anything to do with how you die per se, but I would say a much higher evolved soul would be able to die in a conscious way. So like somebody that's kind of getting towards where they may not have to incarnate in human form anymore to learn these lessons, that might be how they choose to pass.
So is reincarnation like your truth? It's not just a belief?
Yeah, I'd say it's my truth.
Because like I've been reading a lot of interesting literature recently, the Newton Institute, and a lot of different case examples or case studies where individuals have had like dual like polarities, where one was, let's say for instance, a member of an indigenous culture, and then the next life they were a member of like soldiers that were battering down the villages and killing and creating destruction. So what is that? Because consciousness is trying to have an experience. Like, what is the life lesson? And then like in this life now, like how do I pick up on like past lives and what I'm trying to learn here, if that makes sense?
Yeah, so I believe that you do not learn about a past life of yours unless you are ready to like see it, ready to experience, ready to feel it. And I actually just had a client on towards the end of the week where I had a very similar thing with him, where he was in Ireland like 1,000 years ago. His village was destroyed by it was like when the British Empire started expanding, and everything he knew and loved was destroyed. And then he had a lifetime after that where he was one of the ones that colonized here where we are in America. So he went from being the one that was destroyed by it to then being in that energy of it. And he was like, well, why would I ever do that? And it's again, this experience, this learning of that is not the way. You've been on both sides, both extremes, and you know that is not the way. And it really is, it's not for us to say like that was the bad life, that was the good life. It was an experience, and it deepened him. I've even thought about how, nobody ever really needed to teach me not to murder. Like, it wasn't a thing. And I think it's because I've had these extreme past lives where I just now know as a soul, like, it is not good to murder. It's just not the way. So these experiences that we hold, and that is how we evolve. And I think the deeper, more impactful the experience, the more your soul can evolve and learn from that.
How do you experience past lives? Like is it through meditation?
I go into meditation before I meet with clients, and then sometimes I'll be in a conversation and I can just start to feel something on someone if they're like really carrying it on them. And I don't often, unless it's like a space where I feel comfortable sharing, like I won't just be like, hey stranger, guess what you used to be.
Hey, go up to a bar, watch Ravens game. Hey, you might not want to do that again.
But I often don't, because I'm not just like open to receive that a lot. But I will, sometimes I'll be in a conversation and I'll start to get something from someone. But it's usually with my clients. I go in meditation and I see it visually. And then I'll also sometimes feel in my body, like if there was a way in which they were like harmed, I'll feel that.
Really? So like...
I won't get like a terrible pain. I'll just get like a pressure.
Sure. Well, it's going back to your point about like quantum physics. Like, are we, when having conversations with people in our daily lives, are we merging with them? Are we becoming entangled with who they are? So like when you and I have a conversation, like you're picking up on my mannerisms, I'm picking up on your mannerisms. And I mean, that just, to me, that just goes back to show that we're all connected at some level.
Oh, we're deeply connected. And our five senses really dull. Like, it dulls our experience of reality down, and it does so we can survive. Like, we can get through the day. We really couldn't get through the day if we were just like seeing all the ghosts that were in the room with us and all the energy coming off people. Like, we really have to just kind of get things done. And that's why when people do plant medicine and they experience when that veil lifts, all that they can see. And I've even, infants, babies, until their vision really develops at the age of 2, they'll look above the person, because I think they're looking at their energy field, their auric field. And then when their vision develops, when their brain learns how to see through just their eyes, that kind of starts to go away. So it's our five senses that really take, it's our reality, but it's not reality. And we can't claim that it is reality, because I know there's even, like, all animals have different ways of seeing things. Like, I know bees pollinate flowers based on, I think, infrared light. Like, they don't see the world like we do. Whose reality is correct? Both are. But just really understanding at the core of it, like, we only can interact with this material world through those five senses. We're not getting all of it. There's a lot more. Sure.
Oh, yeah. The light spectrum alone, like the amount of light that we interpret just through our senses is like, minuscule. It's not what the total scale of light. So that, like, how often am I in a reality? Like, am I in my own reality bubble when I leave this space? I'm in my reality, and then like the only time that I entangle with you is like when I'm having these interactions. I'm always curious to that. Like, and then like, how is it that your energy has an effect on me and vice versa? Like, how do I carry that? So when I do the spiritual work, like, I know that everything at the fundamental level is consciousness. So my presentation to that, my presentation to the people in this room, to the cameras, to the ceiling, to everything, if I'm sitting here with an open heart, which is easy to say right now because I'm in flow, but when I'm not, it's closed off. But when I want to do the work internally and I go out within the world and I want to make a difference, I immediately think about how I need to give, materialistic things, physical things to people to show that I care. But if I change my perspective and think that everything is consciousness, if I can just open my heart and radiate that energy, I feel like I have a substantial effect on them and their being. And I guess that goes back to quantum physics as far as like, we're all becoming entangled in that moment to where I am receiving your energy, you're receiving mine, where you're feeling things in your auric field, you're feeling things in your body and interpreting that as, I guess, you're knowing it's mine, not yours. How do you heal that, right? Like when you, and this is a two-part question, right? So how do you present yourself to the world, right? And how do you heal yourself or protect yourself from other people's energies?
I clear my energy every day. And I think, I'm sure you've all heard stories of young children that are born with gifts, like born with the ability to communicate with the deceased or born psychic. And they have a very difficult time going through childhood. And I think it's because they're just so open. And I'm noticing this with my daughter as well. My daughter is very intuitive, and I think she's just like a sponge. And we took her to Disney World last year, and it was a disaster because I think she was just absorbing everything, all the energy at the park. And I think just realizing that some people are just naturally more porous. Me, I think I used to be when I was very young, and then I shut it off, and then I had to open it back up when I stepped into this work. But knowing that it is something that you can release what's not yours. And I clear my energy by clearing my chakra system. And then I protect myself before, like every morning I do a quick clearing and then protection. And then before every session, I'm protecting my energy, and then I protect the space that we work in. And at the end of the session, I break it, and then I release what's not mine. And I can feel when something isn't mine usually, but I actually had an experience, it was about a month ago, where I had picked up an energy. It was very dark, and for some reason it was just like out of my awareness. And it wasn't until I had been struggling for a few weeks, and I brought it to Brian, and I was saying like the thoughts in my head, and he was like, this is not you. And I had to reach out to a wonderful magical woman to clear me, because I for some reason just couldn't see it. And I actually I've always been good with my energetic hygiene, but I wasn't sure how much I bought into like a bad energy getting stuck on me until I lived that experience. So very much understanding that you are constantly interacting with others. And I think the more that your light shines, like the more in tune you are with your higher self, led by your soul, and you're shining brighter, I think things can just naturally want to like gravitate towards that. So again, energy hygiene, clear yourself.
Sure. So going back to the soul, Viktor Frankl, I've been reading his work quite a bit recently, and he talks about how human beings are conscious, we are consciousness, and because of that, we have a responsibility to live the best life that we can possibly live because of our mortality, essentially. We're all going to die in this room. And that's the perspective of the human. So because we're consciousness, we have a responsibility to live the most high quality of life that we can because we are mortal. But looking at it from the soul's perspective, right? Like, what is the soul's purpose? If I know I'm human now and I know that I'm mortal and I will pass away, so I want to live the highest quality of life that I can possibly. But if you're timeless, if you're immortal, like, what becomes your purpose then?
I think it is to evolve through experience, and I very much see it as it is a gift to incarnate here. And I work with a lot of people that just want to like reach this land of ultimate peace, where like they're not fazed by anything. They're constantly in like that oneness, unconditional love. And I'm like, you will get back to that when you pass. You are actually here to have the human experience. You're here to experience the highs, the lows, the joys, the sorrows, all of it. And I think it would be pretty boring to just be God and not do anything. So that's what I think the soul is. I think the soul is it's God's way of experiencing itself, or source, or goddess, whatever word you would like to put in there. So it's a fractal of that, so it can experience itself through our experience. It experiences, even, I think God experiences itself through the experience of atheism, through the rejection of God. That's an experience as well. I think that's what it all kind of, and that's my like more, it's a little bit of like a levity approach to it, but I would think it'd be very boring to just be, so.
Oh, 100%. I think, yeah, right on. I would now, question is lurking in my mind now, like, is that your definition of a God? Like, the higher self having experiences all throughout the universe and galaxies of just fractals of itself, getting to know itself in order to have an experience of what love possibly could be, right? To know itself more.
Yeah, so I think there was something that started the Big Bang, something that went from nothing to something. I think God is an energy that just moves towards creation and life. So there's like a stillness at the beginning of every galaxy, every eruption. And I think that's what God is the knowing, the creation energy, the blueprint of life that starts that cataclysm towards, billions of years later. We are now on Earth having a conversation, contemplating what he or she could possibly be.
It's so fascinating. I mean, I think about it quite a bit. Like, what if the Big Bang is nothing but a thought in the mind of God, right? And then God has fallen asleep and now is experiencing a dream in which the main objective is to wake itself. Mm-hmm. And it's so, because it's like, I don't know, it's a paradox. Like, how does God experience itself? It would be through this experience, as Trey.
Well, if God is oneness, God would experience him or herself through separation. And that's what this experience is right now. It's us forgetting that we are just oneness, source, unconditional love. And we've gone through the terrible trauma of separating to then remember, I think, to come back to that.
Yeah, and that's the macro. I think about like the micro, where as children, as babies, we have there's anxieties and neuroses, like of the splitting away from the mother, the oneness. And like as a man, I'm always trying to come back to the mother or to the wife, or, it's like what Freud talks about with the father and the son and all of these different ideas and unconscious like neuroses that they experience. It's all about coming back to the oneness. Mm-hmm. And I wonder if that's like the human condition, like just like that, all the anxiety that we feel, right, is from the programs that we experience of like people telling us what we should and should not be. And then knowing the true essence that's within inside of us, it's naturally like bumping up against that, like pushing us towards a different direction. So like when I think I have to be a certain way because my persona is programmed that way, like there's a natural resistance or a higher self that is guiding me, that is pushing me. So like I'm feeling this natural anxiety of like, this isn't like who you are. Mm-hmm. Like you shouldn't be doing this. Like, but yet this societal programs are like, but this is success, Trey. This is what it looks like. Aren't you happy? Aren't you happy to be here making this X, Y, and Z? Aren't you happy doing this X, Y, and Z? But what is that pull? Like, what is the soul trying to tell us? Like that we're on the wrong path, that we're doing the wrong things? Like, and essentially, is that the signpost that it gives us? Is the feeling within the body?
I would say that feeling of unfulfillment, of emptiness, of I've done everything that you told me I should do. Why do I feel unhappy? Why do I feel unfulfilled? Why do I feel empty? That's something that I commonly work with people on. And I think you've hit the nail on the head. They do it because they're told this is the path they should take. And the programming of that is that is school. It's just like very much an institution that's designed to kind of give you this one narrow way to achieve success. And it doesn't really fit for a lot of children as is, but then we kind of push them further and further and further down that path. And one thing that I'm always working with my clients and my friends and loved ones on is, what do you desire? Like, are you ever even asking yourself, checking in on yourself with like, this is what I should be doing? Yes, you think you should be. What do you want? Like, I know many people that allow themselves to be guided by that very powerful question.
I wonder though, like, how do you know if it's like the egoic desire or if you know it's like your soul's purpose?
I'm kind of here for both. Like I love me a life filled with desire, and I don't shame the ego for being. The ego does a really hard job of keeping us safe. And he or she's been doing that for a very long time. And I think the more that you are in tune with your soul, with being led by your heart, being led by your higher self, your ego's desires naturally start to shift.
So as you obtain more awareness, or let's say information is frequency, and as you gain more frequency, let's say that it's a higher vibration or whatever, like now your goals are starting to be malleable to a point where they're matching that frequency for yourself or what you're trying to obtain.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I always advocate for really getting very honest with yourself about what your values are. I call them your aligned values. Mine include, it used to be presence, but I've evolved it into peace, because for me, peace is truly being present with every emotion I have and every experience I encounter. being present and then at peace with it after I've experienced whatever emotion has to play out in my body. And then community is a very important value of mine. And I structure my life around being able to be present with my daughter, present with my husband, and this peace in my home. I am doing a lot in my life to build community, create community. So having these values of mine that I've really worked with them and distilled them. And some aspects of them, I would say, are from ego. Like another one is, I really enjoy like holistic self-care, like the sauna and the cold plunge, things like that. Is there an egoic part of that where, you know, I want to look good and feel good? Sure, let's let her have some time. She's been doing a lot of work. So I'm not like shaming that piece of that, you know?
Yeah,
Is it
yeah.
ego to want to live to well into your hundreds?
Well,
Maybe.
everyone is trying to, it feels like everyone's trying to kill the ego, you know? Like
I don't want to kill the ego.
yeah.
I want to listen to
The
the ego.
zeitgeist is like kill the ego, right? Like become
Yeah.
the oneness. But then it's like you're just creating more duality.
And more division and tension within your body. Again, I want to listen to the ego and I witness her as what she's doing, what she's trying to keep me safe from a very distorted lens of the ego is there because we've separated. That's why it had to come online. So she's working with often very outdated programming to keep me safe. So just having compassion and again, listening. And I don't think of any relationship that you have with anyone. If they come to you and they're like, hey, Trey, I have this really huge dream for my life. And you're like, well, you're an idiot for having that. How dare you? We should go do mushrooms and probably kill you. That's not really going to get you anywhere. And that's how, again, I'm in dialogue in my head of I'm allowing that ego, I'm allowing it to speak, and I'm just not allowing it to dictate the show.
How do you experience reality? I've asked you this numerous times, but I just find it so fascinating, the subjective experience of someone, you know, looking, you know, being disconnected from that source and being in this body and having this persona and ego of Trey. Like, how do you walk through this life?
It changes because there's different parts of my day that I have to get through. I like to build meditation into my day. So oftentimes, instead of just constantly consuming media like podcasts, whatever, I will just clean the kitchen, do the dishes, and I'll be in a meditative state. And in that state, I can receive, like I know I've had moments where I've reached out to you just randomly on voice notes, like, hey, you came to me in this meditation, I have this for you. I receive for my husband, for my daughter in that state. But then there's like, I really have to get through the day where I'm just more shut off. I'm not allowing things to come in. So there's times where, and I feel that openness where I'm like open to receive. And then times where like I'm going out in a crowd with my daughter, I'm going to be kind of closed off from receiving.
So when you have that door open where you're receiving information, does it come to you in voices? Does it come to you in feelings, colors? Like, what does that look like?
All of it. I had a message around my husband, I think it was 2 weeks ago, and it was right before he did something that wasn't great. This message came in and I had like a knot in my stomach, and I was like, oh, I should probably like check on him. And then I get a call and I was like, oh, that's where it came from. So it's a combination of things. My body really speaks to me very powerfully. So if it's something where, and I work through fear, because I can have fears sometimes where I'm actually having to sit through like, is this warranted? Like, is this my intuition talking to me, or is this a fear? Like, unfortunately, we live in a world where school shootings are a thing. So I was dropping my daughter off at school and I just had this terrible feeling in my stomach of like, don't do this. And I had to sit with that, like, is this an intuition, don't do this? Or is this, I watched the news and now I'm programmed with that fear? And I was actually able to like parse that out. And one of the ways in which I did that, I was like, okay, I'm gonna need like a huge sign, like if it's like an actual no. So kind of just asking for other guidance. But that's something I find myself having to do, where if I've experienced something that I know was programmed to put me in a fear state, sitting with, is this an actual intuitive hit of mine? And I work through a lot of this with my clients as well. They'll come to me and be like, I'm getting an intuitive hit on this. And I kind of work through, is that your intuition or is that your ego? And I help them parse out how the two feel different.
So like if someone were to ask a question now, like would you be able to receive information for them and what they needed to hear?
I think so.
Does anybody here want to give it a go? Does anybody want to be a guinea pig and asking a question about consciousness?
Anytime.
Any type.
About a past life? I'm just not sure.
Oh.
Would you have to like go into a meditative state with me, or?
Are you just curious about any past life?
I've done several, and yes and no. I think I've been on this journey before.
You have. I'm getting a few around that.
Yeah, several times. It's sort of a gut feeling, knowing. Sometimes words are absolutely inadequate to explain.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess just for confirmation of that, Trey's has seen me work.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to explain.
Yeah, so you have definitely a past life where I'm seeing you're working with plants and creating like tinctures, and then you have a big book of all these like things written down, and this book was passed down from woman to woman in your family, and it's like this very sacred text for you. And I'm also seeing, in a darker sense, when that lifetime ended, that book was taken and burned. So if you've had that same experience that I had, where there was any fear maybe initially being seen in this work, it feels like that was a trauma you were carrying.
Yeah, you have to have thick skin to do this.
Yes, you do. And then there's a connection with, there's some sort of like, you were a priestess, and you were really, that's kind of when your gifts started very much coming online, is the way in which you were taught in that. And it's not Egypt, but I don't know exactly where. I feel like it might be even more ancient than, I think Egypt's not the word, but the location might be there as well. But this is not your first rodeo.
No, actually, we self-published a book 2 years ago, and the title of the book is "This is a Test, This is a Test, This is a Test."
Yeah.
Because it's all a test. Most people fail the darn test.
Yeah, and it feels like the act of creating that book and then publishing that book was really related to that karma and that lifetime that I first brought up, of when that book was like,
Huh, that's interesting.
yeah. So like one of the guiding purposes in this lifetime was to reclaim that power of writing your wisdom, your magic, and then having that consumed.
That's an interesting perspective. Yes, I'm a medium. I tried very, very, very hard not to do this work.
Mm. Yeah.
I, went blue collar. By the time I was 23, I had lost both parents and most grandparents, so I was asking God, where did everyone go? I did not expect to get the answers.
Yeah.
So, and worked several jobs, college, grad school, and really tried very hard not to do this because of responsibility, and hope to goodness I get it right.
Yeah, and the call was too loud. It feels like it could not be denied. Try as you
No,
might.
I couldn't deny it.
Yeah.
I just couldn't. And I really cautiously, because unfortunately I meet a lot of parents who lost a child. Mm-hmm. There is no greater loss. And if I didn't believe in what I do to the core of my being, I would not look a parent in the eye, and God help somebody who would. Mm-hmm. But taking on that responsibility and, praying that, gosh, hope I get this right.
Yeah, you're getting it right. You're doing a beautiful job.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, that was interesting, the connection to the book.
Next day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So when somebody hears that, like, what does that do to their energy? Like, I feel like it expands it to more potential. Mm-hmm. Like, if we look at the quantum realm as like infinite possibilities, infinite potentials, the wave, right? And as these experiences that we have, sometimes they're existential shocks to where you sit with a medium for the first time and you guys give us information that no one else could know. You were talking that, for instance, that night you were talking about my grandfather who was in the railroad industry and was training men and being a mentor for them. And you have no background information on me, but you're saying these things. So the way that I look at it is it expands the awareness around of what this reality is. And so the programs start to get a little bit quieter. And so now if I look at it and I connect with this infinite field of potentiality, like I can start consciously creating the reality in which I resonate with. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't have to come from, it could be egoic, but I feel like, to your point, like if I'm aligning more and more with my higher self's purpose, that frequency, that energy is guiding me like almost like a guidepost, and it's also changing the things that I want. So it's not going to come from, oh, I just want to run a podcast to have a, come here at the tribe and do this X, Y, and Z. No, it's more of, I want to be here and heal a lot of trauma that I have surrounding being seen and speaking about these topics, about consciousness, the people that I care about and the people that care about this work and being seen on film and on camera. And when that heals that wound, there's an expansion. And so my reality starts to change and synchronicities and things start aligning more so with that mission. How have you seen your reality change as you expand your awareness, as you open yourself up more to potentialities in the quantum field? Like, is there like a knock on the door? Or like, is there somebody saying, hey, look, this is a new opportunity for you. I'm presenting this opportunity for you. Or is it like really subtle to where like there's like little synchronicities? Like I'm trying to think in perspective as my own experience of like when I change my awareness around the subject, whether it's a past program or a could or a should, like when you really start to do the work and make the change, like how does your reality start to change?
So I can speak to, there are subtle ways, but I get very clear on what it is that I want for my business, for myself, for my family, and I make the ask. So I usually make the ask. I kind of journal out what I want, because for me, writing it is very powerful. It like kind of puts it into motion. And I literally, one of the things that I did on the spring equinox of this year was I wrote, I want to expand my capacity of being seen and being witnessed. I want to do an in-person event, and I want to start doing retreats. And that put in motion, I think you called me the next week, or it was like a few days later, because I think when you first mentioned this to me, I was like, I manifested you. And then Lena and I partnered so kismetly, so beautifully to do our retreats. And I like to write them down because, again, it sets it in motion for me, but then I can also go back and I can see how beautifully everything that I'm calling in is happening. It's in motion. And I'm calling that in from, again, that place of alignment, my aligned values. So everything that I'm calling in fits into every single one of those values that guides my life, guides my family. And I like to make the ask to the universe of like how many clients I want per week. And at one point I was ready to increase the load. My daughter just went back to school and I went into ceremony. I made the ask. And then I think I get onto like LinkedIn. And then one of my clients made this beautiful post about working with me. And he's like, I want to connect you with her. She's great. And I was like, oh, thanks. It's happening. So there's a kind of just ways in which you could say, oh, that's coincidence. And that's fine if that's your reality. But in my reality, there is no such thing as coincidence. It is me being a co-creator of my world. And when I'm operating from that place of alignment, trust, and faith, I see again and again and again how I'm being met there.
That's beautiful. Zach, is there any questions on the live there?
Yeah, they were asking who you're speaking to for that purpose.
Okay. Just pick one, yeah, if there is one.
No other questions.
Okay. So, go ahead.
Some guidance. It's about tribe. It's only 6 months old. And I would love to get some guidance of like, why is it here and what it needs from me?
It is here because there is a very deep call right now for community, for a tribe. It's this way in which that you have a beautiful frequency that you are seeding. And I feel like just by others being around you, that sparks in them. And you are putting your magic, it feels like, into this. I feel it in this building when I walked in. And it is very much here to create this sense of, we need belonging right now. There's so much divisiveness. You are the antidote to that. You are creating this haven where you can come in and you can connect. And very specifically, this active connection through overcoming, through like a jiu-jitsu workout or a cold plunge, that is imperative for healing the masculine specifically. This kind of facing what you can do and overcoming that feels seated with the divine masculine frequency, but then you yourself are just this beautiful feminine energy, and you are meant to be the weaver of that experience. I'm seeing your higher self is showing me like this weaving together. Does that make sense? Any other follow-up questions?
The follow-up question is, what is the steps to bring every class to be packed with people instead of 1 or 2 people.
Is something with your throat. It feels like there's something with how you are. Is there any fear or blocks around like advertising? Not advertising, but like you speaking, or there's something out of alignment with what you're speaking isn't really connected from that true heart-centered place. And there seems to be like something like a hesitancy or a fear of going. It feels like there's a call of what you should be doing, but you're not fully listening yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think what comes to mind is that I actually don't share a lot of myself through the tribe social media things because I'm afraid that it's going to feel like the Lola show, all about Lola, you know? So because of the fear of that, I almost do the opposite. There's very little to nothing of me.
Yeah, and you are not all about the Lola show. So just because you don't embody that energy in any way, so when you do step up to a platform where you are voicing these things and you are making the invitation, that's not the energy that's going to be spread or met. People are going to witness you as what you are here to give when you are going up to that space. So there is that's an egoic fear. And it feels like that was also, there's some ways that you might be judging others in that place for being like, I don't want to be like her. I don't want to be like that. But that is indicative of a shadow. So there's an aspect of you that you've rejected. Maybe a show off. Like, were you ever called a show off as a kid, as a little girl? Like, there's this aspect of you that you took on as, it's bad for me to be center of attention and show offy, so I cannot be her. You need to integrate her, get her back online to guide you to that place where you are pulling people in. And really explore anytime, and don't explore your judgments with shame, explore them with curiosity, but anytime you are judging another, that is indicative of a wound in yourself. So our judgments come from either we projected it in ourselves, or this person over here has full permission to be the thing that you could not be as a little girl. And I would really sit with, how can you bring her back online? Because again, the invitation needs to be made, and that's going to come from that. It feels like it's like this throat-heart connection, and the invitation to come join your tribe is going to come from a heart-centered place. You're welcome.
That's beautiful. Thank you.
Thanks for the questions.
How do we collect those parts, right? Like, how do we sit with ourselves? How do we dive into the intrinsic landscape of who we are in meditation and reclaim ourselves of who we truly are, not the personas that we believe ourselves to be?
Yeah, so I do it through, in my shadow work, I do it through, I'll give the example of when I first became a mother. I judged other mothers for being selfish. Like, oh, I could never be selfish like that. When in reality, I had abandoned the part of me that could be selfish, but behind that word selfish was a mother that put her needs like high up. Not like when, they're a baby, you have to kind of put their needs above yours, but I wasn't taking care of myself at all. And in reclaiming that word, it was a reactive word to me. So like, anytime that you've rejected something and it's in your shadow, you have like a visceral reaction to hearing it. So like if I called you a show off, how would you feel? Like, oh my God. Yeah. I'm feeling it right now. And that was me. Like I couldn't, and I would envision it coming from like, if my husband looked at me and was like, how could you be such a selfish mother? It'd be like, oh God, like I can't. And I was holding that part of me. And in meditation, I was envisioning what that part of me looked like, and realizing that I had to bring her online to take care of myself, because if I don't take care of myself, I cannot take care of my daughter, I cannot take care of my family, I cannot be balanced, and I cannot create that peace that is so high up on my list of values. So it was, in my meditation, it was visualizing what that selfish person looked like, and then I integrated her back in, and I allowed her to be. And I did this. I also do a lot with envisioning people calling me the bad thing, and I sit with that feeling, because a lot of times that feeling is shame for being the bad thing, and we don't want to feel the shame, so we need to escape from it. but I sit with my capacity to be called that. And I kind of like neutralize it until it's like, okay, I am that thing. And then when you kind of embody that thing, because that's what I believe that we are all the good things, all the bad things, we're all of it. But the bad things tend to have so much more power because we've kind of coded them with shame. Like, I could never be that, or I would be terrible. And I just kind of sit with the feeling of embodying that, and then it loses its charge.
So going back to past lives, like this is another question that I've sat with quite a bit, is if past lives are having an effect on us right now in this reality, what about future lives? Like, how do they affect us? Are they pulling us through the now moment?
So time is a construct. And I use the words like past because that it makes sense to our brain to think like that was me in a past version of self. I don't know how linear it really is. I think everything's kind of happening, and it is. And I have tapped into more evolved lives of mine to guide me in my work. So when I first started doing this work, I go into meditation and I kind of go in like a temple, and I was being met with this priestess who I would bow down to her, she would bow down to me, and she would put her forehead on mine. And then one day we did that and she just stepped into me. I was like, where'd she go? And then I could just do things. Like I was doing things in session that I didn't know how I was doing them. And I feel like it's because I activated and embodied a future version of myself.
Can you give an example of that? Like, just leaving names out, but like, what was the thing that you were able to do?
Yeah, so I had a client who she had an early pregnancy that was not viable. And she wasn't passing it. And she reached out to me and she said, I think I'm not passing this because there's an energetic, like there's a message I need to know or something energetic happening. So we met for session the next day. And then I kind of gave her the messages and I was like, I feel like you need time to integrate this. And then tomorrow, I want you to go into meditation at 10 a.m. And then on my end, I'm going to go in and I'm going to meet you there. So she was in meditation. And then on my end, I went into my temple, and I set the intention of I want her to release this gently and completely. And I was being guided by what to do. I work a lot with my hands. I have very powerful chakras in my hands. And I was just being shown what to do. And it was actually like, at times it was just like my body took on a life of its own and was like doing things to like release. And then a few hours later, she texted me and she was like, right after the meditation, I started bleeding. And she completely released within 2 days. And she went to the doctor and she told her doctor how she did it.
What did the doctor say?
The doctor said she wanted to meet with me. I haven't heard from her yet, but I like how she was open to it.
So all right, I'm trying to go back because there's a lot of information in there. Did you tell her that you were doing this for her, or did you?
Oh yeah, it was like, I would never do anything without full permission. That's, again, it would kind of sovereignty. And I don't know how much I could do if I didn't have full permission. So I was like, let's go in and let's do this energetically and let's see what we can do. Because I very much also believe that women create so much more powerful magic when we're working together. And that is one of the, the patriarchy kind of separated us and kept us away from each other. And I think it's because when we are working together, the power just increases. And there was a field of belief there where she believed I could do it and I believed I could do it. And I think that created magic. When I've done things like this, it has been met in a very deep field of belief. And I think that's one of the things that we're changing right now with these conversations is I think we're changing that field of belief where more magical things can start to happen because it's there and we believe it can be there.
What does that do for you? Like as the practitioner, as the goddess, as all of it, right? Like
the first time I did it, I was like, wow, what else can I do? But now again, this work, I very much feel like this work is sacred. And just like you were saying, it's a call that you cannot ignore, and you are going to do the work in a very deeply committed way in your integrity. But it's these type of things where if I am speaking to someone and they don't believe what I believe, that's fine, because I've had the experiences that show me otherwise, and you can't take those experiences away.
Yeah, that's a hard one.
So if you don't answer the call, what starts to happen?
Chaos.
chaos.
You read my book. A professor in college came up to me at the end of the class. A homeless woman on the street walked up to me. Crazy things started happening. And being from Baltimore, there wasn't many places, to learn. I was very, very fortunate not going to study with someone who knew a lot of mediums from England. Her name was Lynn Hertzgard. She was not a medium herself. Astrology, so little by little, I believe when you're ready, the teacher will appear. And so that's, and then I still continued, and I went to, college, grad school, degree in finance, worked in law enforcement, federal law enforcement. So there was this whole other side of me that was doing this. There were only a few people who actually really knew what I did, and one was my field partner. And we would go out because we'd be on the streets, and we would get into our house. I got a really bad feeling about this, boom, boom, boom. And afterwards he said, "How did you know that?" I said, "Oh, it's women's intuition." He said, "My wife doesn't have that." So I say I came out of the spiritual closet 10 years ago, but I've done this for 25 years.
Yeah.
I
find that it gets more and more uncomfortable to where, because change is scary. It's that's why a lot of people don't make change.
Well, particularly to walk out in this field, you have to have thick skin. And there, speaking personally from what I've experienced, it has a bad name to a certain extent, because there's some fraudulent people out there, and so you're up against that as well as, when I meet with someone or a large event, Terry's been in my large events, if someone doesn't want me to, give them the message, it's very difficult. So yes, it's right, it's very difficult.
That's a good point too, because it's like, I've spoken with over 500 mystics, channelers, psychic mediums, however you want to classify them. But like, how do you know when you're out there? Because I feel like people are starting to awaken more so to this type of information. Like, how do you know what's right? Because it's unregulated, right? YouTube puts on a lot of episodes of different spiritual podcasts, and they're all talking about different phenomena. Like, how do you find the right teacher for you? How do you find the right messages? Like, is there an indicator that people should be looking, is it more or less like feeling the body, how it resonates with you? Like, how do you find the right teachers?
So I very much believe you connecting with your higher self, your soul, and the ability to just hear something and say, like, that's not for me. And for me, that's gotten stronger as I've gotten more deeper in my knowing. I can hear somebody's worldview and just be like, cool, that's not how I'm going to think of things. And I even think about how that's happening now, where I have like some people saying like, oh, the world is ending. And I'm like, my world's not ending. That seems like a very stressful perspective to have. But this ability to just be able to listen and feel into, is that my truth? And for me, it's something usually very powerful that will shift how I experience things. It's also for me, there's certain voices that I very much trust because they put me so at peace when I hear them.
Who's been that for you?
I'm just thinking right now, like Dr. Zach Bush. I love him. And he was just talking about how when you water plants, like they can hook up plants to an EKG, and plants actually change like their frequency based on you coming to nurture them. And like, that just makes sense to me. So like when I was watering my plants this morning, I was like, hey babies, do you feel me? Like, I didn't have to question it. I didn't have to get the study ID. Like, I just knew that was the truth. And that was a truth that I instantly took on, and it changed my worldview. It's gonna change how I talk to my daughter about interacting with plants, which we've always done together, her and I. But when he speaks, I very much feel like he gets into a frequency where he's just channeling divine truth. And there's very rarely things that he says that I don't agree with.
Sure.
But it has happened, and I've not allowed that in my reality as well. So I have discernment based on, again, how is it hitting me instantly? And sometimes it doesn't hit instantly that positive because my ego is kind of pushing up against it. But it's kind of, I have this relationship with what I consume of, I trust this voice feels like it's guiding, so I'll allow it. Whereas I think I told you the last time we spoke there's another woman who channels where Instagram keeps like suggesting her to me. And I don't think she's channeling something that's for me at all. So every time she comes from my feed, I don't consume it.
Do you think it's from a less, no, I wouldn't say lesser, but like a lower energy entity? Like, because it's always an entity that channels through them information. So do you think it's because of that? Like, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to be cautious because I haven't really felt into it a lot because I don't, there's just something there that's like, no, like it's like that's not for you. I know some people do have the experience of when they opened a channel, they do start channeling lower density, lower frequency experiences, which is why I always, if that's something that you're curious in doing, I would first connect with your soul, like connect with your higher self. And that will be, I think, a way that you can be guided down that path. Yeah, I'm not going to speak to what I think it is because
Sure.
even now, if like I feel into it, I'm like, nope, not for me.
Well, I can respect that, but I can't thank you enough. I think we should wrap it up with.
Can I ask one more question?
Sure, go ahead.
For both of you, don't you think that unless someone's had a positive experience with everything that you're talking about, that they don't really perhaps get it or understand it unless they've experienced it? Trey, in speaking with you, when I asked you how you became interested, because not a lot of men are that open. And when you told me the experience with your friend, but had that not happened, do you think in general someone needs to have a personal experience themselves to really understand it or to look further? Does that make sense?
Sure. I think it's the difference between reading about doing a push-up and then doing a push-up, right?
Exactly.
It's something you have to experience at a personal level, or unless it doesn't mean anything to you. Like for my example, a best friend of mine lost his daughter. That led us down the path of exploring mediums and how they connect on the other side with that daughter that was giving information and data to that family that was accurate that no one else could have known. And so my curiosity surrounding that led me to research more about near-death experiences with, or past life regressions with Dr. Raymond Moody, which ultimately led me here today and speaking with so many different guides and teachers. I think it's 100% like it has to be like an existential shock almost to where you are pointed in that direction. What are your thoughts on that?
Yes, and the consciousness is changing. So like I was talking about that field of belief, things are shifting and they're shifting very quickly. And many of us are raising our children in a very different way to where I think that might be the thing that woke us up, but I think that's changing. And I very much honor that I don't believe that every soul is on the path right now to awaken. I think, yeah, so just very much this isn't the way.
Right.
Living a life where you're not open to this is a very powerful and meaningful life in itself. So I'm yes, and I'm so curious to see like how it is when my daughter is.
How old is your daughter?
She's 4.
Oh.
Yeah, but even, as she navigates her teen years, I'm hoping very guided by her body and her intuition. We'll see.
They're like little sparks of light. That's how I see children.
Absolutely are.
Just taking everything in right now.
Yes.
100%.
Little sparks of light. Well, thank you for answering my question earlier also. It really made sense.
Thank you.
Thank you for your questions.
So do you want to give them some tools or some guidance, or like leave us with a blessing, or set the intention to end this space, this conversation, like in a positive vibe, like energetically? Like, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, since we were talking about clearing energy, I was thinking we could just go through a very quick clearing grounding exercise to get you guys really tuned in with your energy centers. So I want you to start by closing your eyes and taking a few deep breaths. I want you to breathe deep into your belly with a long, slow exhale. Breathe in deep with a long, slow exhale. I want you to envision now diamond white light falling from either source, the sky, and I want you to feel that light start to fall on you. It is entering your crown chakra, which is the chakra above your head. And I want you to feel that light fall and cascade down, and then it starts to enter the top of your head. It is now clearing from your third eye chakra, the chakra that sits right between your eyes and your forehead. Breathe in. And on your next exhale, I want you to envision that light continuing to come down. And as it passes over your jaw, it releases any tension that you might be holding in your jaw and mouth. And it is entering and clearing your throat chakra. And as it is clearing this energy center, you also start to notice any tension in your neck and shoulders begins to dissolve. Breathe in, and on that next exhale, that light continues to fall down your shoulders, and it enters and clears your heart chakra that sits at the center of your chest. And I want you to take a moment here to feel into how deeply you are loved, how deeply needed you are, exactly as you are, and feel into the love of this room and your community. And on that next breath in and exhale, that light continues to fall. It falls down your chest, and it enters and clears your solar plexus chakra, which sits right above your belly button. Next breath in, I really want you to fill your belly with this one. And on that exhale, we're going to clear our sacral chakra that sits below our belly button. Breathe in. On that next exhale, it goes into our root chakra, clears our root chakra, and you start to feel that tension in your hips and lower back dissolving as well. And continue envisioning that diamond white light going down your thighs, your knees, your ankles. It goes through your feet. Your feet become roots, rooting you deep into the earth. Breathe in. Exhale. Now take a moment now to see if your hands are guided to any particular chakra. And if they are, just take some time to breathe in and release. Release tension, release fear, release guilt, release shame. Breathe in, exhale. You are grounded to the earth. You are connected to the divine. You are love. Whenever you're ready, you may open your eyes and come back to the room.
I feel like we should have done that at the beginning of it. And it's funny, like as Zach's standing over there, I see two rainbows and against the wall. And I think, when was it, Thursday that I texted you?
You saw
I
two
saw
rainbows?
a double rainbow. And yeah, I just want to thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy schedules to come and sit with us today.
This is great. Thank you both very much.
Thank you guys so much. This was an honor.
How can people reach you? How can they connect?
MelissaLegette.com is my website. And then Instagram, Melissa_Legette. Not Melissa Legette. I didn't get that one.
So what exactly do you do, services that you offer?
So I'm an intuitive. It's like a psychic, but I don't future cast. I use my gifts to very much look within, and I'm looking at your programming, your belief systems, and how they are out of alignment with what you consciously desire for your life. So I usually have that as like either a standalone session where I'm just kind of going through and I can give you a big picture perspective with practical steps forward. But most people choose to work with me on a longer term basis, and I then go into coaching to help them create these shifts.
And that's where the past lives come in intertwined, I guess?
Yeah, our subconscious is made up of, again, that childhood programming, generational programming, but also past life imprints.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I want to thank you, Lola, for
Thank you,
hosting us
Lola.
here at Tribe. This is my source of creativity. On many days, I came here on my birthday when I turned 41 and had just a complete session of surrender with the brothers that were a part of that. And it wouldn't have happened without you birthing this into being. So thank you for that. Melissa, thank you.
Thank you, Trey.
For being seen with me and talking and speaking your truth and giving me the confidence to show up and be who I am. So thank you.
It's an honor. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
And that's a wrap. First interactive podcast ever.